TYT are turning over and on their back to show their belly to the fascists, saying, please rub this. We'd like to work with you and we'd like some favorable treatment from you.
Serious about progressive policies, and you won't just do it. You will screenshot me saying this and tag Jink in it and Anna in it and TYT in it and Rebel HQ and share it.
So whatever Jink and Anna are on right now, it's just too much. And because at a certain point it becomes embarrassing.
Did real work that wasn't paid for.
I just wanted to do a good job because I'm really good at video editing, like,
really, yeah.
And like it felt like they were stealing. Like it genuinely felt like I was being robbed, working there.
What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean?
What do you mean?
What do you mean?
That's the name of the shot.
They're making nice with people who have the most nefarious intentions for us.
Attacking the left at every single opportunity.
They're throwing the left under the bus and condemning the left for everything under the sun, and then cozying up to right wingers. What do you make of that? Is that grift, as they say?
Yeah, it's for sure grift.
In order to start grifting to the right.
They've really been trying to push the network in a much more MAGA-friendly direction while they've been attacking left-winger, progressive, lefty, and they're burning
all their bridges with anyone who's like vaguely left-leaning.
At the precise moment when we need progressive media on lock. We need progressive media hitting on all cylinders. And we got them instead over there trying to make nice with Glenn Beck and Tim Pool and all the rest of them. For what? For why? For clicks?
It's strange. I was just talking to Donald Trump. I was doing a fundraiser at Mar-a-Lago a couple of days ago. And I said, I think like we're like the cool kids now. I've never been at the cool kids table.
This is wild.
You were expecting the skull thing, weren't you? Well, I thought if I'm going to make a video to pretty much say, fuck TYT, I should probably put my face to it. Especially since I'm in the position of being such a small channel that no one knows about still, I can say whatever I want. And also being all the way down here in Australia, what are you going to do? So, I feel like I am the person in the best position to straight up say, fuck you, Anna and Jank, you're being a bunch of
So he knew Rittenhouse was going to come up.
Yeah. I think they agreed on the topics ahead of time.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
And we had to look. Jank is his own man. The best I can do is share my perspective. And I just told him, I was like, but he was acting in self-defense.
There was no self-defense in this. He's patrolling the streets with a loaded weapon. He's looking for it.
This man was in a whole other state, Antioch, Illinois, left there to go to Kenosha for one reason. Because why would you go to where there are already police officers already dealing with a fiery scene after Black people had been murdered and shot, right? We know this was a couple months after George Floyd, and then Blake happened a couple weeks, and then he shows up. For what? With the intent to hurt someone and murder someone. That's why you brought your gun. That's why you were walking around in that situation with your gun.
Now, as you saw, that was Anna on somebody else's show saying that what she thought the Rittenhouse did was self-defense. And then I had 2 clips from the TYT network. And now this is how you can find both of these videos. If we change the filter to show us the videos in chronological order, let's see what we find. Jeff talked about it. Shout out, Jeff. And these 2 shows that are part of the TYT network, but it doesn't seem like they discussed it on the main show, which is interesting because Anna's willing to discuss this topic on other people's shows. It would be very interesting. I would certainly watch it. Might help with the decreasing views that TYT is experiencing. And now let's go back to the 2 clips from the damage report and Indisputable.
We learned of a number of text messages that Rittenhouse had sent in the weeks leading up to the killings. So the texts were in response to seeing shoplifters at a CVS pharmacy on August 10th, a little more than 2 weeks before the shooting in Kenosha. Here is some of what Rittenhouse said. The world is disgusting. I wish they would come into my house. I will effing murder them. So he said, I want an interaction with these protesters. I will kill protesters. And then 2 weeks later, he once again put himself into a situation where he could plausibly claim self-defense.
Hancock's account seems to support the state's claim that Rittenhouse
was looking for a fight on that August 2020 evening when he arrived in Kenosha. Atmosphere there had grown increasingly volatile, with armed residents facing off against protesters demonstrating against the police shooting of Jacob Blake. 29-year-old, remember that, black man paralyzed after a run-in with a white officer. Atlanta Blackstar giving us that reminder. Hancock's account would have bolstered my main argument about Kyle's state of mind, Prosecutor Thomas Binger said in The Trials of Kyle Rittenhouse, a new documentary airing on the Long Crime Network, may have changed the outcome of the trial. Hancock had been working for Rittenhouse since after the shooting. He initially believed Rittenhouse's claim of self-defense, but that changed after he later became aware of text messages that surfaced as part of a civil lawsuit filed by the family of one of the victims. He told Law and Crime that the jury probably would have convicted Rittenhouse if they were aware of the text messages. Hancock, who helped Rittenhouse promote his book, Acquitted, for parting ways with the shooter sometime last year, said he regrets misleading the public. There was a history of things he was doing prior to Kenosha, specifically patrolling the street for months with guns and borrowing people's security uniforms, doing whatever he could to try to get into some kind of gunfight.
And just to be sure, I double-checked and triple-checked. I searched Rittenhouse bodyguard, Rittenhouse spokesperson, even Rittenhouse TYT, and went to see what they've talked about on the main show. And they've talked about a lot of things to do with Rittenhouse, but not this. And as you saw, I included the date in the top corner because I'm going to be unnecessarily fair to Anna here, even though I'm going to echo what Mundell said, where even before these text messages came out, it was pretty obvious what was going on. And so I think it would be a good opportunity for Anna to go on her show and defend her position, explain why she believes what she believes to her audience. She can debate it with someone who disagrees with her, because I've seen the clips on the internet where she explains how she believes it was self-defense, where she looked further into it and that someone was aiming at Rittenhouse. And I'd like to add this other point. If it was justified because someone had a handgun pointing at Rittenhouse, well, I'd imagine that would be because he was the dude walking around with the gun that is typically used for mass shootings in a country where you have a lot of mass shootings. Isn't the saying you need a good guy with the gun to stop the bad guy with the gun? And then you get this whole problem of which one's which then? But I would imagine the guy with the gun that has more rounds and more power would do more damage. There you go. Simple trolley problem for you there. But go on, Anna. Defend it. I want to hear her say she believes it was justified that he went there in the first place. Because when presented with more evidence, she changed her mind to believe it was self-defense. Perhaps presented with these communications by Rittenhouse, she might be convinced that it is more nefarious than self-defense.
He just disagrees about it being self-defense. He thinks like he didn't need to like shoot the gun. He didn't need to kill people. I hear you. I wish it didn't end that way. But if I were in his shoes, I would have done the same thing.
Yeah, but his shoes wouldn't have been there without him making the decisions that he made. So what point would you have done the same thing as him, Anna? Were you going to be the 17-year-old that got a gun? Mind you, you're in a country where you can't even drink till you're 21, but this 17-year-old had a gun, went to the next state over to a protest, and people got shot. But you are saying he was defending himself.
Sometimes I'm a little scared or I'm afraid of like talking to people who are outside of my race because I don't know if I'm going to unintentionally step in it, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. That's why Anna. Yeah, that's why I don't talk to black people too. Yeah.
Talking to people outside of your race is a bit intimidating for you, Anna. I don't know what you're doing being the host of one of the largest progressive networks on the internet.
I know some people who don't like looking at our country through a lens of racial justice or injustice will bristle at what I'm about to say. But for people who cannot help but looking at this country through the lens of racial injustice because they themselves are a racial minority. They themselves have been targeted. They themselves have been historically enslaved, oppressed, trafficked, denied voting rights, and locked away for, far less crimes. For people who've been sentenced to death, even though they were innocent. All you got to do is close your eyes and imagine if Kyle Rittenhouse were black. That's it.
Yeah.
That's all you need to know about this case. You just imagine
100%.
if he were black and wonder if he would have gotten off on all of the charges that he got off with. Attempted first-degree homicide, to reckless endangerment of endangering safety, all not guilty.
And we'll do the little thought experiment Francesca is setting up for us there. Would he have gotten off if he was black? My answer to that is, why would you think he even made it to the courtroom? If you have that many people, that many black people that are killed while they're unarmed, why would I think that if one of them was armed, they wouldn't be killed? Tamir Rice had a toy gun. 12-year-old was killed. So if a 17-year-old that was black had a AR-15 and killed some people and the cops showed up, it would be stunning if he even made it into the back of a cop car alive and then even saw a day in court. That's my thought of it. I now bring this up because the reason why I'm focusing on this is because the first TYT video I ever saw, the way I came across this channel was their coverage on police killings of unarmed black people. That's how this channel came to be in my YouTube internet diet. And so to see it devolve to Anna saying Kyle Rittenhouse was just acting in self-defense, quite a fall from grace. And this is a big deal for me because the first video about something I made for this channel was about how police deal with black people in Australia. This was back before I ever showed my face, back when I was just painting things and talking about things, and TYT was a big inspiration for me. And so you can see why it's a bit upsetting that I feel like I can no longer trust the main host of a show to discuss one of the main topics that brought me to their show. And with that said, there's even other angles you can come at this from, which I haven't even seen TYT really address either, and one of them being guns.
The 2018 huge ad at the industry trade show. Guys in jeans, t-shirts, backwards ball cap, AR-15, staring down the protesters. Here you have Kyle Rittenhouse, jeans, backwards ball cap, t-shirt, AR-15, shooting the protesters.
This is 2 years apart?
2 years apart.
And now, to further discuss this topic but taking out the gun aspect, I would really like to hear Anna's thoughts on Daniel Penny, the guy that killed Jordan Neely in the New York City subway. He was acquitted recently. If she thinks Rittenhouse was defending himself, I would love to know what she thinks of Daniel Penny, who also was invited by Trump to go into a luxury. So, yeah, would love to hear Anna's thoughts on that. Wouldn't we, CJ?
She talks about how gangs are taking over Aurora, which is a suburb outside of Denver. I happen to have spent a lot of time in, and I can report back safely that there are no gangs taking over this poor suburban enclave, as even their Republican mayor notes. So I'm just wondering, what is it that makes people do this ideological pivot in their late 30s?
Well, and just to add to that Aurora thing, 2 points. I can't help myself. One, the Aurora thing. It turns out those guys in that video weren't even part of a gang. That video that went viral, apparently coming out of Aurora, I guess it was like a week or two ago, the police said they're not part of a gang.
So where do we begin? I want to begin with why it is so problematic that Anna Kasparian took a story that we on the left, we in progressive circles, a matter of fact, mainstream media, even mainstream media did their due diligence to understand that the story of the Venezuelan gangs that had allegedly taken over an apartment complex in Aurora, Colorado, was not what right-wing media was saying it was. And here's the problem. It wasn't just right-wing media. It wasn't just MAGA that was pushing this narrative. It was Anna Kasparian on the platform of TYT, building up the fear and the xenophobia that was a fundamental cornerstone of Donald Trump's victory in 2024. Here is the misrepresentation of the truth by Anna Kasparian on the Young Turks.
Some video footage that shows armed men confronting a driver in the parking lot of the apartment complex. Let's put that up. So if you look closely at the kind of upper right-hand side, you see a car parked and you see individuals approaching that vehicle armed with guns. Luckily, in this case, the footage doesn't show anyone getting hurt or getting shot. But apparently this particular apartment complex, according to some of the residents and former residents, has been riddled with all sorts of gang violence over the last year. But this incident has sparked a big debate and I believe some gaslighting about whether or not there is a problem with Venezuelan migrant gangs basically taking over apartment buildings or causing violent crimes at these apartment buildings. And the local government can't seem to keep its facts straight or its story straight. After that, it appeared that the state and local leaders kind of went into panic mode because they started to claim that there's no problem at all. What do you mean? This is a figment of your imagination. In fact, the governor, Jared Polis, claims that the allegations are a figment of your imagination. And Aurora's interim police chief said that the gangs had not taken over one of the complexes. Now, depending on what you're hearing different things. And whether or not this is a widespread problem in Aurora, Colorado remains to be seen. Let's be clear about that. But the issue of this Venezuelan gang carrying out violent acts and crimes in the area, there seems to be a lot of evidence of that, while the Democratic lawmakers and leaders in the state and local level want to pretend like it's not happening at all.
I need you to check the framing before I even get to the evidence, because I want to show you evidence that proves that the entire narrative of the Venezuelan gangs that ostensibly took over an apartment complex was manufactured by a public relations firm that was hired by the slumlord landlord. If look at the screen, this is the condition of the neighborhood of the apartment complex that instead of addressing the slumlord hired a public relations firm to stir up anti-immigration sentiment and fear and xenophobia all over the country. And this was a story that you would hear from Fox News, Newsmax, OANN, all of the right-wing echo chamber. They were forwarding this narrative. And what was the truth of the matter? The truth of the matter was there was no gang that took over the apartment complex. It was a spin. It was a spin in order to protect a landlord who didn't want to take care of his property. But I want you to catch the framing of what she said. She framed, listen again. I got to play it. Listen again at how she framed it at the very end.
Venezuelan gang carrying out violent acts and crimes in the area. There seems to be a lot of evidence of that, while the Democratic lawmakers and leaders in the state and local level want to pretend like it's not happening at all.
The Democratic, listen, to have the largest progressive media outlet doing the literal work of right-wing conservatism, of xenophobia, of bigotry, and spreading misinformation and then framing it as a problem of the Democratic Party, when in reality, it is a problem of a greedy landlord who was sophisticated enough to hire a public relations firm that can do the evil machinations of spinning a story that was the problem of the slumlord into being a problem of a Venezuelan gang.
Right. So like in any issues we've had with that Venezuela story, which now has been thoroughly debunked.
Any apology about that?
None. It doesn't seem to be the case. But like that you know, even if you're saying, okay, you know, there's nuance in this story, it's about what you choose to cover and what you choose to give credibility to.
I'm happy to go on that show at any time and debate these issues. But after that, I don't care about any of this. Honestly, it's a waste of my time.
And that right there is the key. Your personal grievances do not matter. What you choose to cover and how you choose to cover it, that does matter, right? We're trying to push back on right-wing narratives while TYT is leaning into them and making all of our jobs harder. YouTuber Jose put out a really thoughtful response to TYT's coverage of the bullshit Venezuelan gang story, which I would highly encourage you to watch, because it demonstrates how TYT played into a bogus right-wing narrative in a way that validated the right's narrative about crime and immigration. Narratives matter. Take a look at this YouGov graphic from 2022. So Americans overestimate the size of minority groups, which means that fear-mongering about these groups are going to be more salient if they're told that they're a threat, since they're perceived as being larger than they are. I mean, they think that trans people make up 21% of the country, but it's 1% in actuality. They think Muslims make up 27% of the country. It is 1% again in actuality. They think that gay people make up 30% of the population. It's just 3%. Now, when you look at this poll from Ipsos, as you can see, people with misinformed views were more likely to vote for Republicans. So if they thought that violent crime rates were at all-time highs or that border crossings weren't at the lowest level in years, then they voted Republican. This is why the issues that we choose to focus on are so important. And it's why we're critical of TYT, because they're focusing on issues that benefit the right, not the left.
And I have a news clip to show you with an update on the situation with these apartments from the 18th of December 2024.
19 people have now been detained in the hours since police began investigating an attack on tenants at a troubled apartment complex in Aurora. Aurora police say more than a dozen people kidnapped a man and woman last night at the edge of Lowry Apartments. That's on Dallas Street near Colfax. According to police, the group took the couple from one unit to another at the complex, tied them up and assaulted them. Police Chief Todd Chamberlain believes the attack was gang-related. He stopped short of saying that it was tied to the Venezuelan gang Transgender. The chief did say that he believes that most of the people involved, victims and attackers, are Venezuelan migrants.
And the reason they do that is because they are easy victims. Because they know, because of their status, they will not come forward to the police. They know that they can mistreat them. They know that they can do things to them that they couldn't do to anybody else in the community, based upon their fear of what the ramifications would be if law enforcement gets involved in that.
Police say the couple convinced the group to let them go by promising not to call police. He drove to a friend's place and got help. They were both taken to the hospital and are expected to recover.
Alright everyone, fair's fair. If you go to the description box below, you'll find a link to the template to an apology card for, oh wait, what's that? There's more of this news clip to go? Well, we should probably hear them out.
So Aurora is taking the property owners of that complex, the managers, and the investors to court.
The city says if an agreement is reached at a hearing next month, tenants would have 30 days to leave the apartment. 9 News reporter Janelle Finch joins us now with where those people might go. Janelle.
The city of Aurora says there hasn't been a finalized resolution between the city and property owners on what's next for the edge at Lowry, but housing advocates are already saying the city needs to prepare for fallout if tenants are forced to leave. The edge at Lowry Apartments is out of chances for redemption, says Aurora City leaders.
Well, we have filed for the criminal nuisance, so that is the route that we are going.
The city says a home invasion where a man and woman were hospitalized with serious injuries strengthens their case to get the apartment shut down. The decision would impact more than just the bad actors.
We're going to see mass exit to a state of houselessness with families with young children if the city doesn't intervene.
V. Reeves is an organizer with House Keys Action Network Denver. They say tenants could face a similar fate to those previously living at an apartment operated by the same company.
We've already seen what happened with Nome Street.
The city closed the apartments on Nome Street in August. More than 300 families were forced out and given just 6 days to find a new home. Reeves says the city needs to prepare resources to help relocate.
We need city support in order for this to be successful. We still know people on the streets.
The city of Aurora says it'll put legal responsibility on the property owners to pay for costs to close the apartment and assistance provided to tenants. Aurora says tenants here would have 30 days to leave if the apartment closes.
These people have rights as much as anybody else, and we need to defend them very strongly and very vocally right now.
The city says the property owners are required to file a formal answer to the criminal nuisance complaint by December 30th. Court proceedings are scheduled to continue in January. Janelle Finch, 9 News.
All right, so we'll hold out on filling out the apology cards to Anna. We'll wait and see if or how she covers this story because, you know, she was covering what's happening in these apartments. She could very well fill in everyone with the update. She might spin it as a I told you so moment, but I really would want to hear her commentary on the legal fight behind it and all the people that will end up on the streets because of it. And so keep an eye out for any coverage of this update to this story. But Anna was complaining that the city wasn't doing anything about it. Well, now it seems like the city's going to close down a second block of apartments. So that's why I'll be really interested to see if Anna covers this update and if she goes into how so many people are going to lose their homes and be given 30 days to find somewhere else. Be very interested to see if Anna addresses that. And I didn't intend to have these first two parts both somehow end on the topic of unhoused people, but here we are.
Have to be less transphobic to work for Trump than if I was to work for TYT.
Disagree with Anna Kasparian and Jenk's take on gender affirming care and trans rights.
Dealing with not only the transphobic nonsense of the Republicans, but also whatever Jenk and Anna are on right now. It's just too much. And
yo, did you know that in Omaha there was a transgender girl that ran track? Bro, what does that have to do with the price of eggs and milk and cheese?
Since I already made an hour-long video titled The Young Turfs about a year ago, this part of this video will only include a couple of examples from my previous video, and then the rest will be things that have happened in the years since. And we'll start with some of Anna's commentary on Donald Trump mocking transgender athletes, in particular a transgender weightlifter.
Right, we don't know exactly what he is referring to. But there are some prominent cases that have led to backlash that he could be talking about. So let's give you the examples.
Stop right there. It is not your job to identify examples for Trump to validate his anti-trans argument. It is your job to explain to your audience how these anecdotes that you can find should not be used to justify discrimination. It is your job to educate your audience about how insignificant this issue is. There are approximately just 150 trans athletes in total in the United States, 100 at the college level and 50 about at the K through 12 level.
So, first of all, when you have an extreme position, you have an extreme position that says, no, we don't ever ask anyone. And I think the Olympics position is actually absurd. They don't do any genetic testing. They don't do any testing. So you could, since they don't do any testing at all, you can just walk in, call yourself a female, not be trans. Trans people are actually
do it, Jane. Do it.
Okay, yeah, all right. Well, you can say it, but then what's going to happen?
Incidentally, as a factual matter, the idea that you can walk into the Olympics as a woman and play men's basketball is obviously absurd. In fact, you can't walk into the Olympics even if you're a man and play men's basketball because there's a process.
Do it.
Okay, yeah, all right. Well, you could say it, but then what's going to happen?
Rugby,
Somebody's going to do it, and they're going to get away with it, and then everybody's going to be furious. Okay, it's all right. I can't stand it, and it doesn't help trans people at all to have these extreme positions. Oh, yeah. Don't test anyone. Just take their word for it. I think it's terrible politics.
It's not an extreme position. It comes from a position of human rights, and it does help all
It's not a human right to compete in the other genders
What you see
sport.
there is when what you just saw are women, are biological women, being attacked for being trans because of the anti-trans athletic narrative that has already festered and has now come for these women.
time, there are some issues that arise where the rights of one group, in this case, the transgender community, kind of conflicts with the rights of another group, the rights of women. And what I think is important is that we actually have a real dialogue, a civil dialogue, about how we move forward in a way where both parties feel that they're being treated fairly and with dignity.
So she's just A.K. Rowling at this point. We have officially arrived in turf territory where she is portraying trans rights as antithetical to women's rights in some areas. She's viewing this as a zero-sum game. If trans women have rights and are welcomed into women's spaces as they should be, to her, that's a net loss for cis women. And she's not specific here, but if you watch her video that she did about Sarah McBride and Nancy Mace, she talks about how dehumanizing it was for Nancy Mace to try to police the bathroom usage of the one trans lawmaker. But in one part of the video towards the end, she drops a little turf comment about how, it does get a little bit more tricky when we're talking about locker rooms.
Look, I want to be specific in noting that I do not have a problem at all with transgender people using the restrooms, the bathrooms that they identify with. The other single-sex facilities like locker rooms, I think, does get a little tricky.
She just drops that in there as she's trying to be an ally to trans people. She had to bring that up as if trans people are the predators who pose a threat to women when they are disproportionately vulnerable to sexual abuse themselves.
Parents in control of their children, being able to make choices for your family. America's been assaulted. Open borders, all the issues. We all know the issues.
Oh, he believes in putting parents in charge of children. That means I don't like gay people. I'm sorry, that's what it means.
That means he wants to be able to make a decision or help.
A decision about what?
He doesn't want schools making decisions for
about
his
what?
Kids.
About gay people.
It's
and racism, right? He doesn't want racism taught. Those are the two issues, Anna. Those are the two issues in the schools.
Those are not the two issues, okay? One of the issues that you're totally downplaying right now, not even mentioning, is that some school districts want to, let's say a student comes out and identifies as transgender, school districts want to support that student and, help him or her through that transition without ever having to notify the parents. I think there are issues there.
Okay,
and I do not begrudge parents for being concerned about that.
Anna, I agree with you.
So when they're speculating about what this conservative means by parents in control of their children, Anna ascribes good intentions to him by suggesting that he's probably talking about school districts who support and help students through their transitions, right, without ever notifying parents. Now, she says that there's an issue with that. Now, let me be very clear. First and foremost, teachers cannot consent to gender-affirming care on behalf of parents. Parents have to give consent in order for minors to receive gender-affirming care. Second of all, protecting a child's identity is crucial because there are many LGBTQ+ kids who become homeless after getting rejected by unsupportive parents. So some school districts purposefully do not out kids to parents because of that very reason. They could literally endanger their lives.
I'll give you some perspective if you have an open heart. So when I was younger and I was coming out as trans at school, I was indeed hiding it from my family. But do you know why that is? Because 40% of homeless youth are LGBT. And for me at the time, my biggest fear was that I would come out to my family and they would kick me out. I didn't want to be homeless. I didn't know how to survive on the streets. So you know what I did? I hid from my family that I was transgender until I was in a position where I could support myself.
And this next part for me is unforgivable. And so we're going to have another bad take from Anna on someone else's show. And to really drive home the point, it's followed by some good reporting by JR on TYT.
Is a good faith, I think, critical thinker. I'm subscribed to Blocked and Reported. I have listened to endless podcast episodes from Blocked and Reported. I haven't seen anything from Jesse Singal that communicates to me that he is a transphobe, that he is a bad person.
Lawmakers have now passed one on Thursday that will criminalize gender-affirming healthcare for transgender youth with a threat of 10 years in prison from medical providers.
So the long short of it is, Anna is a fan of this guy whose work is used to try and help argue for anti-trans laws across America to harm trans people and to threaten medical workers and just cause damage to people that just want to live their lives. And that's why I'm showing you something that's given to the court with arguments for these anti-trans laws. And when you look at who some of the authorities listed are, what do you know? You've got Anna's favorite right there.
I haven't seen anything from Jesse Singal that communicates to me that he is a transphobe, that he is a bad person.
It's like, no shit, Anna, you don't fucking say. He never announced on his own podcast that most of his work is used to help push anti-trans laws. And finally, some clips to see the journey Anna's been on, and a clip where I think she may have got the idea from.
They know there's a difference between gender and sex. They know that it is very possible for someone to be born a biological male or a biological female, but in terms of gender, identify differently as a male or non-binary, but they still have the biological capacity, the physical capacity to get pregnant. So that's why the language, the rhetoric is inclusive to include those people. It is not a big deal. But they make it a big deal. They manufacture it into a big deal. But I understand the importance of inclusive language. I just don't like to be boiled down to a body part. So Mike Figueredo from the Humanist Report reminded me of a video we did a few years ago where we were defending someone who used the phrase people with the capacity for pregnancy in the context of the abortion debate, I believe it was. I'm totally fine with that. I think that's totally fine. If that's what they want to use in a medical setting, great. But for me, my personal preference is I don't like to be referred to, even in the context of an abortion debate, as a person with a uterus. Person with the capacity for pregnancy, that's great. That's all I'm saying. I think my track record on transgender issues is pretty clear, and I hope you understand that I have no disdain or hatred for the transgender community whatsoever. That's all. Michael Knowles gave a speech on March 6th over at CPAC, and that one statement, that one pretty gross, disgusting endorsement of eradicating transgender people did exactly what he was hoping it would do. It helped him with his show numbers. It led to a bunch of anger, people who are rightly upset that someone would call for that kind of violence against a group of people that is incredibly powerless and discriminated against in this country. And I would suspect, we don't know for sure, that a lot of the disgusting commentary that comes from people like him is due to the fact that they get rewarded for it. Michael Knowles was rewarded for what he said.
Are you a union buster?
No, I'm definitely not a union buster. So,
well, there's evidence that proves otherwise, though.
What evidence?
On February 12, 2020, a group of workers at the Young Turks came forward with a union.
This Twitter page pops up out of nowhere, right? And it's TYT Union.
They'd used card check, an election process in which 50%, little help, Bernie.
If 50% of workers in a bargaining unit plus one sign a card saying they want to join a union, they will have a union.
For 9 days of silence, the company formally rejected voluntary recognition, saying they were prepared to voluntarily recognize the union, but only after a second election was conducted on terms more favorable to the company. While they wanted people to believe they were protecting the democratic will of the workers, it was in fact, as labor journalist Sarah Jones pointed out, classic union busting.
You guys can read it. There was a Politico story about it in 2018. And also I would say that the NLRB complaint is public if people want to look it up.
Because as NLRB filings would later reveal, the Young Turks hired two anti-worker management side law and consultancy firms. Since the home of progressives is largely member-funded, it stands to reason that the audience deserves to know how much they spent on union busting.
But they ended up having to recognize the union after a long legal fight, but
for people who actually think that we busted a union and there's no union here, yeah, I can see why they'd be angry, but it's not true.
You see what he's trying to do here? Trying to say that you can't be mad at him for doing the thing because he didn't succeed.
not voluntarily recognizing a union as a supposed progressive company doesn't speak too highly about the sincerity of those values.
Welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk Uygur and Kasparian, all back in the studio here, Polymarket Studios in LA.
Thoughts and prayers.
2024. Cenk Uygur is made an offer he can't refuse. His nephew Hassan Piker refused the offer, but Cenk Uygur did not.
Okay. For Polymarket. Wait,
no, seriously.
Wait. You want to know something about? You want to know something about those? First of all, they got raided by the FBI.
The CEO did.
Yeah, the CEO did.
The investigation set to center on whether Polymarket violated a prior settlement with the U.S. government by allowing American-based users access to its platform.
I don't know if you know this, but they offered me, as a starting point of the conversation, $1 million to just sponsor my election coverage, and I said no.
Good for you. God bless your heart. I probably would have said yes.
As a sponsor, does Polymarket get editorial decisions at TYT? No. Very clear. What else is part of the sponsorship? As part of the sponsorship, Cenk will be doing some additional content on YouTube live twice a month. He'll dive into some of the charts on Polymarket. They're super interesting and help us better understand public opinion. Find out more on polymarket.com.
Checking polymarket.com. Polymarket's one of our sponsors. And why I care about them is, number one, it gives you a state of the race as to what other people are thinking, and they're not just thinking it. They've actually put money behind it, and hence they believe this with a lot of conviction. And so that's part of the reason why it's interesting.
In fact, it went as far as naming the studio that you paid for, people. Every subscriber, every member. TYT raised over $400,000 on Indiegogo to build the very studio that they are now naming after Polymarket.
Overseas betting market that isn't even legally allowed in the United States, and to sell the naming rights of a progressive media company to a corporation, I would call that corporate media. I don't know about you.
Let's take a look at what kind of stuff Cenk will be covering. So you can gamble on the Romanian presidential election, the Fed decision in December, what price will Bitcoin hit in December, which Trump picks will be confirmed, TikTok banned in the US before May 2025, sorry. That has a 28% chance according to the Polymarket. Israel versus Hamas, ceasefire in 2024. Seems like a highly ghoulish thing to want to put and spend money on and then gamble on, genocide, but that has a 46% chance. A 46% chance, everybody. Right there, again, seems highly unethical, profoundly fucked up.
Because look, if we're just going to use fascist toward anyone we dislike, all right, then the word doesn't actually mean anything.
Okay, what do you want me to say, Anna? You want me to say wannabe dictator?
Sure, you can say wannabe dictator, but I don't even think he wants to be a dictator.
Of course he does. That's what you do when you lose an election and you go, oh, I got fake electors and I'd like to terminate the Constitution and bring out the tanks and use martial law against American citizens and shoot protesters. I mean, if that's not fascist, then I guess the word just shouldn't exist.
But was he able to do those things?
Trump's
his rhetoric is awful.
Okay, if you don't want to be called fascist, stop saying fascist things. It's not that hard.
Okay.
Not that hard. Oh, here, let me have dinner with Nick Fuentes, who's a Nazi, Kanye, who's a Nazi, and let me say there's good people on the Nazi side. Oh, it could be pro-Confederate guys. Might be guys who are pro-slavery who are good guys. Let me do all of these things. Let me say that immigrants are poisoning the blood of our nation, a Nazi term that is only used in the past by Nazis, and then say I'm gonna ban Muslims, I'm gonna do this and this and this to all the other ethnic groups, and then go, oh, I can't believe you called me a fascist. No, he is a fascist. I'm very happy to call him a fascist.
I've been trying to figure out why I'm more optimistic now than I was before the election, even though I was so against the guy who won. I know now, MAGA is not my mortal enemy, and neither is the extreme left, okay? My mortal enemy is the establishment, and they have been defeated.
You know, you pick one or two issues and then you start buddying up with the right. And I see this with TYT and Anna Kasparian. And I'm curious what your thoughts on that are.
Before I answer that, I'm curious your thoughts on, do you think it's going to go fully in that direction? Like, do you think it's genuinely going to end up like a Jimmy Dore or a Dave Rubin?
Yes.
This is what you said when Dave Rubin pivoted. Let's have a look.
There has been this prevalence of prominent figures who identify as the left, right, or on the left, who then later start to, cozy up to right-wing figures, and then it turns out that they completely move to the right wing because they're essentially paid to do it. They're used as tools by the right wing to essentially spew right-wing talking points while purporting to still be on the left. In fact, Dave Rubin's a great example of that. Dave Rubin used to work with us. He identified as someone on the left.
Dave,
yeah, go ahead.
Forgive me, Anna. Dave Rubin made a video for PragerU why I left the left.
Oh, I know.
He does not, in fact, state to the world that he's still on the left. I don't know who you have in mind, so I can only address the one name that you gave.
So, I mean, have you pulled a Rubin, as some people suggest?
I mean, I'm still pretty left-wing, and I'm still working at the exact same place. Look, I don't know. Maybe I was wrong about Dave Rubin, but I just felt that he, first of all, after he left TYT, he did lie about us, and that bothered me because we were still friends, and I didn't understand what was going on. So I was discombobulated about what was happening with Dave after he left TYT. He did leave on good terms, so it was weird. And, he kept saying that he was this classical liberal, but had trouble defining what that meant and had trouble reinforcing or at least backing up some of the claims that he was making about, his newfound identity. So, look, live and let live. Dave is doing his thing. I did feel that his pivot was strange, but maybe it was sincere. Who knows?
But I feel like we've seen this show so many times. It's a rerun. And I actually think they're less subtle. Like, I think Anna is less subtle than Dave Rubin's grift.
Okay, she's pulling a Dave Rubin, and everybody could see it.
But to me, with time, it's become apparent that, like, both Cenk and Anna, they just don't want to listen to good faith criticism.
But the issue many take with Cenk and Anna is that they refuse to have these conversations with many important leftist figures or address criticism in good faith. Look, I will say what I think they think is that they think that there is good faith criticism, and some of it they think of it as not good faith criticism.
And what really struck me is how, they just disregarded the arguments that we made. It was not in bad faith, even though they don't want to, acknowledge that. It wasn't in bad faith, but they said it was in bad faith.
Even saying the thing I'm saying, I might be bad faith. I don't know. Like, it really is actually upsetting, and it's scary because I've tracked some of the people who they think are bad faith, and do not read the same at all. I don't get that at all. And so as someone who's also tried to hold my tongue, as someone who's also scared for my job, like, what I'm saying? I don't know what to do anymore. Like, you don't know what to do anymore.
And for me, I think that moment that really clicked with me, no, it's over, was when they went after Emma Vigeland.
To Emma, another sign of her pathetic dishonesty, Emma was employed by TYT when the company announced recognition of the union. These cheap shots to make herself look like a class warrior crack me up, especially when she advocates that we all shut up and take it when someone assaults us on public transportation. Not wanting to get punched in the face is a bougie concern after all. I don't know why she's bringing that up. That's when Emma talked about just some potential confrontation she could have had on the New York subway with, I think, a homeless person.
I really hope that that Cenk or Anna or both, they talk to Sam Cedar or they talk to
I would love that.
John Iadarola and Francesca Fiorentini.
Made it clear to Cenk that he was invited to come on the show, and we can have a debate, we can discuss whatever. I mean, and he made it clear to me that he was not interested in that.
I want to facilitate more of these conversations. I literally do.
I've proposed debates to Cenk with us, between you, me, him, and Anna, and he didn't take me up on that.
I was watching The Vanguard, and they're playing a clip of Francesca where she tried to have a conversation between them and John, and Cenk denied it. So the fact that they're not doing that is so frustrating to me.
It's this idea. Oh, this is what Cenk's been going around saying now. When we disagree, let's disagree, and then let's go have a beer after, and then where we agree, let's unite. This is his big thing that he's going around saying now.
So number one is when we disagree, we fight. That seems fairly simple, and I think the internet's got that one on lockdown. Number two is you must have a beer.
And also, he still has not responded to Sam Cedar's request to debate.
So apparently when you disagree, you don't fight unless it's with the right winger, and then you go and pander to their audience.
Because it really does. They seem to think, as you sort of pointed out, that anybody who disagrees with them on certain issues, it truly is just a grifter and they're a liar.
When grifters on the left attack you, whether it's
I don't think they're
Rubin,
grifters.
I think Cedar's a grifter. When
I disagree.
Okay.
And, you know, whether it's crime issues or trans issues, they seem to think like everybody who's on the left genuinely loves crime, right? I've heard, this is something I've heard from them.
Everyone will hear exactly what they want to hear. Criminals are great. I love criminals. We should let all of them out of prison, and we should, you know, allow them to terrorize working class people when they're trying to get to work. And that's actually going to make everybody's lives better. So
yeah, and let me
if
do the other
if
half.
that's going to make everyone happy, then fine. Okay, I give up. I give up. Okay, criminals are great unless they're white. If they're white, we should put them in prison for.
Yeah, nah. This shit here is absolutely appalling. Because how can you say what she just said when 13.7% of the whole population in the United States makes up 38.8% of the prison population?
Unless they're white. If they're white, we should put them in prison for.
It's like, you know, I want them to talk to somebody who can rep that counter argument, who they respect enough to give them the space to make the argument, right? And I don't know if they'll do that. I'd be willing to have the conversation with them.
That'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, I would have no problem having that conversation with them.
So I don't know.
To be honest, I just don't really care to like collaborate with any other leftist ever again at this point.
Yeah,
that's where I'm at, because they come on the show, they build a name for themselves, and then they build a bigger name for themselves, trashing us as if they don't know who we are, as if they haven't worked with us, they don't know what our actual political values are.
And it's like, look, I understand that, but it gets squirrely when you say that like PBD's an honest actor or Tim Pool's an honest actor. You can have a conversation with them, but you can't have a conversation with Sam Cedar.
It is interesting that still no response to Sam Cedar's both private request to have a conversation about this on the air on either TYT or on the Majority Report.
Right.
Right.
So,
that's what is.
I mean, that's
so
just seems,
frustrating.
And you know, Cenk and Hassan did that thing on Thanksgiving, and
by the way, everybody said no. Those 13 douchebags represent all the left. You're not on the left anymore because the 13 douchebags control the left. And then what happened next? Then Majority Report jumped in, and Lance from the Serfs, and all the other little dirtbags jumped in, and they were like, "No, Cenk and Anna are turning right. The 13 douchebags are right. We need to protect every trans person should get free surgery. Even in China, even though we have nothing to do with China, we hate them. They're Nazis."
You got to okay.
I mean, I'm 100% right. Every dirtbag show did it.
You got to calm
Every
down.
dirtbag show did it. Tell me I'm wrong.
If all of your passion comes out and you get really like fiery and riled up, just when it's those little areas of disagreement with the left, I think that's why a lot of people are like, I don't know if I like this.
And I, for one, do not like this. I know I do not like this. I cannot support a lot of the things that they're saying. And even if I did support what they were saying, I still can't support what they're doing. So I feel that the union busting thing and the Polymarket thing alone are enough to justify my decision here. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm just here to give you information for you to use to make the right decision for what you want to do. And unfortunately for TYT members, they wouldn't feel too good about where their money's gone and what's happened with their funding. But fortunately for anyone that supported this little channel here, I am very proud and pleased to say that I have matched every dollar given to this channel throughout the whole time it's been taking money from people. I have matched all of it and given it to people in Gaza and people who need it a lot more. So not only did you probably pay my internet bill at some time, but you can also rest easy that any support you've given to this channel, it's just been used to do good things. And also, I'll send you some stickers or a fridge magnet made by me personally. Come on, I don't know who else is doing this sort of stuff. And with that said, thanks for watching, like and subscribe. But yeah, please also go subscribe to the channels I have listed in the description box. Much love, see you next time.
What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean?
That's the name of the channel. What do you mean with an exclamation point?